If your records state that you have all the symptoms, if the doctors state that you have the symptoms, then it almost should be a given that the regional office, the Veterans Administration, would grant you benefits. And in many cases, that ain't the case. Period. Bottom line.
I'm going to start off with a brief introduction of the panel, and this is how it's going to go. We're going to have about 30 minutes with the panel where I get to ask them some softball and hardball questions, and then in the final 30 minutes, I want to hear questions from you. So start thinking about them as you hear them discussing issues, write them down so you don't forget, and then I'll be calling on you guys in the audience to ask them later. All right, this is being taped, so be on your best behavior, and we'll get going, all right? So the first person that we have here to my right, I believe your left, yes, something like that. All right, is Lieutenant Darren Myers of the U.S. Navy. There he works on legal issues and criminal defense. Next to him is Tom Digan, and Tom Digan works at the Naval Legal Service Office. Excuse me, this is a mouthful. The Naval Legal Service Office, North Central Detachment, Great Lakes, as Legal Assistance Department Head. Did I get that right?
That's correct.
Okay. In the past, Tom served as a volunteer legal assistance attorney for the Naval Legal Service Office, Europe and Southwest Asia, providing assistance to service members and their dependents and assisting the active duty attorneys assigned to ROTA. He also serves on the Illinois State Bar Association Standing Committee on Military Affairs. Next to him is David Rogers, who served in the U.S. Army for 7 years. He is the co-founder and executive director of the VetNet, a veterans peer support NPO whose mission in part is to provide peer support services to veterans and their families. He is also the director of the Illinois Veterans Peer Support Project, which is funded by the Illinois Department of Veterans Affairs. His personal mission is to train and empower other veterans with disabilities as peer specialists. Seated next to him is Jessica Thornhill, who graduated from the U.S. Naval Academy. She then served for 6 years on active duty in the Navy as a surface warfare officer and as a legal liaison. Following her service, Jessica attended John Marshall Law School and in her first year became involved with the Veterans Legal Support Center and Clinic, and she has continued her work there. During her time, she has assisted countless veterans with their legal issues, mostly focusing on VA disability service benefits. Finally, we have Jason Vale, who is the director of the American Bar Association Military Pro Bono Project. With that project, he accepts civil law case referrals of active duty service members from military legal assistance offices worldwide for placement with pro bono attorneys anywhere in the United States. Jason is also a legal editor of Clearinghouse Review, a journal of poverty law and policy, which is published by the Sargent Shriver National Center on Poverty Law here in Chicago. And he recently completed work as the lead editor of the journal's 2009 special issue devoted to meeting the legal needs of military veterans, service members, and their families. Please welcome our panel, please. So I have a saying in my office, because I'm the editor, and I have a bunch of people under me, and they're always coming to me with problems. What am I supposed to do? I had somebody come to me yesterday. I said, there are no problems, just solutions. So you can leave back out and come back when you have one. So I'm excited today that we're going to have an esteemed panel that can talk about a lot of solutions to the problems that service members are experiencing and what those problems are. So I think right off the bat, we're going to get started with that. And I'm going to start with you, Jason, if it's all right. What are some of the most significant legal problems you see facing active duty service members?
Well, the ABA's Military Pro Bono Project, as you said in the introduction, takes case referrals for active duty enlisted service members from legal offices around the world, such as the Great Lakes office here. We've taken some cases from there. And what we've seen in those referrals for those service members, primarily family law cases, those are the predominant legal problems that most active duty service members face, and that tends to be what you see in the pro bono world generally. I think as the kind of number one legal issue that you see. But what happens with folks who are on active duty service and the problems that they face with these cases are somewhat unique because they're often in a position where they can't effectively deal with that legal problem. They're deployed overseas. They're stationed in a state that's far away from wherever it is that the legal problem has arisen. And so, in addition to just simply being in a position where they may have difficulty being able to find an attorney that they can afford to be able to help them with their problem, they're also engaged in other activities that take their attention away from this. And we certainly don't want our service members who are in Iraq and Afghanistan and in combat zones to have to be burdened with the problem of trying to figure out how am I going to find a lawyer to help me with this child support problem, or with this credit card issue, or whatever it is, while I'm engaged in this in this war. So that, even though substantively what we see are family law cases, a lot of consumer law things, the biggest problem I think overall that service members face is simply being able to find legal help in a way that is not going to take away from their focus on their mission.
So finding legal help and affordability,
Right.
Those are the biggest issues. Do you agree with that, Tom?
Yes. Darren and I work at the legal office up in Great Lakes. Family law is our second most common issue. The most common issue is easily handled by us, which is the wills and estate stuff. People go into war, they want to do a will, so everything's taken care of. We're well equipped to do that, because it's with the wills, it's a come in, get them done, and they're done. It's not a continuing type thing with like the family law. Additionally, it's something we can do in the office rather than having to appear in court. We have a very limited ability to go into court. There's typically in the legal assistance department, Darren has now moved from legal assistance over to defense. There's anywhere between just myself to up to 3 attorneys, and we see anywhere from 6 to 8 per day at minimum. So with the next person coming in and the next person, it's hard to really delve deeply into anything. Basically what we do in the legal service office is triage, and then we try and find someone like Jason.
Are there central resources for people when they're looking for help to kind of connect, organizations that you all are working for? If you're saying that people are having a difficult time like finding attorneys.
Well, they can find us. Anyone on active duty, no matter what uniform, can come and see Darren or myself. Any military legal any base has a legal service office. That would be the initial point of contact and stuff like that.
So, David, let me ask you this question. What kinds of legal problems do you see are faced by veterans?
Well, there are 2 things I think that are important here. So number one, there is a big disconnect between the evidence of veterans' records when they petition the VA for service-connected disabilities, and having the evidence of record follow the veteran as they apply for disability benefits. There's a big disconnect, which causes, or has as a direct cause of having over 1,000 claims for disability in backlog. And of course, the problems associated with that, not being able to get the services and support you need, especially in cases of PTSD, are problematic, and they spiral out from there into those societal problems, not being able to pay the rent, not being able to go to school, etc. And right now, I believe we're dealing with about 60,000 veterans who have gotten personality disorder discharges from the current conflicts that we're in. And here again, they're precluded from accessing VA healthcare services and those other support systems that are in place. Because the character of discharge is listed honorable, and I believe that John Marshall could speak more to that. But once you get past the phase that also you're dealing with a system that seems to be kind of like an entity unto itself. void of, shall we say, those balances that you would find in the civilian system, where the appeal process, I still got a claim pending after 30 years, been remanded 6 times. They're not, shall we say, that disconnect and that inability for the evidence of record to be considered almost in a sense of a presumption for PTSD. If your records state that you have all the symptoms, if the doctors state that you have the systems, then it almost should be a given that the regional office, the Veterans Administration, would grant you benefits. And in many cases, that ain't the case.
That is not the
Period.
case.
Bottom line.
Jessica, can I get you to respond to that question earlier?
Well, speaking of the personality disorder, the VA has certain criteria based on discharges you get from the military, whether or not you can get service-connected disability, even if something happened while you were on military service. And that's what he was alluding to regarding personality disorder. They have certain criteria for that. That's all listed in their regulation. So that is an issue that we have to face in trying to determine how to fix that characterization. That's not done by the VA. The characterization is actually done by the military themselves. So just on that aspect.
And can you speak to, you were talking about your personal case for 30 years. Why is it dragged on that long?
Well, number one, I'm rated at 100% permanent disability for post-traumatic stress disorder. It gets confusing even trying to think about what the real reason is, but somewhere in there, the claim was not appealed within a certain time period. And so then I had to start the process all over again. And I was given a date that was not, shall we say, in line with the date that the injury occurred. So that's how the appeal process started. The other problem is its representation and ignorance on the part of the veteran on how to actually submit a claim. And so that representation is normally done by service officers that are individuals that are familiar with, I think it's CFR 38, which are the rules and regulations of the VA. And these service officers, well-intended, some of them are great, but most certainly they don't have the expertise and of a lawyer, say, or even a paralegal. And so therefore a lot of the claims are not as presented as well as they could be if lawyers were allowed to represent. I think you are now. It's okay.
Sorry, not to...
No, I'm going to defer to you because you know.
Well, I work at the John Marshall Veterans Legal Support Center, and our job really is to help. We kind of act as like the link between the veteran trying to appeal their VA claim and a pro bono attorney, because as David has alluded to, it is confusing once you've appealed it, and he gave a perfect example of himself. But the VSOs are veteran service organizations such as Disabled American Veterans, these groups usually do the initial claim people, and they are very busy individuals, but they do the initial process and have had decent success rate in our standpoint. They do pretty well. I myself am a disabled veteran, and I had no problem. I used the Disabled American Veterans, went through perfectly fine, and I didn't have any problems. But there are those individuals that do, and that's the reason why we started the Veterans Clinic. Is 3 law students decided to come together and form it. One had actually come back from Iraq and had a very difficult time trying to apply for his benefits, and realized lawyers really could help with this. This is a very tedious process once you try and appeal it, as we've discussed, and that could really be a great thing we could help with. So they started the clinic in January of 2008, and since then have had over 1,000 phone calls and dealt with over 300 individuals where we process. We have law students at the school where we go through the claim that the individual is trying to appeal, do the initial research just to try and see, if they have the evidence that's necessary to back up their appeal, and then we connect them with a pro bono attorney in our network who we've trained on the processes of the VA's intricate details, and then they go from there and hopefully succeed. It gives them a greater understanding, both the veteran and to work with a lawyer who understands the process, so they're a greater success rate.
So do a majority of people file the claims and the appeals by themselves a majority of the time?
Well, one of the problems that veterans face is ignorance of the system, and they're always encouraged to engage one of the veteran service organizations to be of assistance. But part of that great disconnect, as she said, it's a very complicated system. Unbelievably complicated. It seems like in one sense they have a law that obviously should grant benefits, and then there is this lack of evidence or this one detail that will allow them to deny benefits.
Tom, let me ask you this, or Darren, either one of you. Why is it so complicated, and what can be done to improve that?
Well, I'll be honest with you. My legal practice with regards to legal assistance hasn't afforded me the opportunity really to get involved with VA benefit issues and that sort of thing. Most of the people that I deal with are younger and haven't really been in situations where they would be injured yet. So I was at defer to Tom.
My only experience is personal. From the legal service office, we are not allowed to do anything that affects the United States or adverse to the United States, so we can't do any VA stuff. From my personal experience, my wife, she's a doctor, and she had a hard time putting together the information. So laying the groundwork to get the claim is a significant thing for a layman to do. And I mean, she's a pathologist who practiced for 20-some years. Still putting all the information together was a considerable amount of work.
So is anybody working on that issue? Because it seems like if that's not addressed, you all are still going to continue to be busy, very busy.
Well, let
me get Jessica in right quick.
The VA is currently working on it. They understand it's a very complicated process, and I believe you talked about PTSD, and they're actually making some steps with PTSD to make it more of a presumption. With so many people coming back with it, there's less steps they're trying to have with it, so that they understand it's an issue and they are working to improve it. I can't say anything's going to happen anytime soon, but it is a process. And another issue is to the veterans themselves. We're seeing a lot of people who are older veterans who are realizing that, this back injury, happened when I was, in Korea, and I'm now, 2010, realizing I need to get assistance for this, and trying to put all that together is very difficult. So it's hard to put out to younger veterans to say, you need to make these claims, you need to, get that process started, because it's already very complicated, much less the fact that it's been a long time since you had that action.
David, you wanted to...
We were formed out of a PTSD group simply for our own survival and to educate ourselves. So in that sense, we are in the front lines on helping veterans form their claims, put the bits and pieces together, and connecting them with places such as John Marshall. Ray and I lobbied for another veterans legal clinic and got that in place. So the peer aspect of this is we have been there, we've done that, we have had to go through the regulations, and in that sense we can be of benefit to our brothers and sisters, not only when they come home, but for those that have been out there for 20 or 30 years. Now, it's difficult enough putting together a claim for a veteran that's just been released, has his medical records in hand, has his history of service. The doctor says you have PTSD. The family says you have PTSD. None of the cats or squirrels in the neighborhood will come back to you, come near you because of the vibes, but yet still the regional office denies this claim. This causes a series of things within the veterans that will very well put them in the hands of the legal system, the invalidation, the hurt, the feeling of being left behind.
Well, what will happen? What will be the result?
What will be the result? You have a veteran that now is left alone to deal with their service-connected mental illness and those societal issues that everyone has to address. How do I get to school? How do I get myself a piece of the American dream, which is all delayed until that claim is adjudicated and benefits granted. So it is a veteran left behind, isolated, And it's not just the veteran, but it's the veteran and the veteran's family.
So Jason, how does your organization help further these cases and situations like this?
Well, the Military Pro Bono Project was created a couple of years ago out of a recognition by military legal assistance leadership that there exists a real access to justice gap for service members, which I alluded to earlier. That traditional pro bono is designed primarily to serve the most low income. Certainly, what it should be doing, but when you are working with service members who are enlisted at the sort of lower end of the pay grades, or veterans who may have some limited source of income, even that limited income will put them beyond the reach of traditional pro bono and legal aid program coverage. So what our project does, and what John Marshall and a number of other projects do, is to try to find attorneys, pro bono attorneys, who are willing to take those cases, to assist those service members, whether for veterans with benefits issues or other legal issues, or in the case of our program, with civil law type problems that offices like Great Lakes can only do so much for, and need that additional help to take that case to court, to provide that representation. And so what we really rely on most heavily is the involvement of the private bar, of private attorneys, law firms, individual practitioners all over the country who are willing to step up and provide that much needed legal assistance, and to do it for no fee, because even though perhaps they do have income that wouldn't qualify them for free legal services, it's certainly not enough to allow them to pay a full retainer and be able to deal with the legal problem, which often results, unfortunately, in allowing that legal problem to go unaddressed, which then, of course, snowballs into other legal problems.
Are there other firms like your group out there that are kind of filling that gap for people who aren't just, chronically low income?
Well, as I said, our project was actually created because there wasn't any resource specifically geared towards active duty service members. There are a number of programs that are doing work for veterans, which, and as you hear, there's far more work even for those programs to be able to handle with the backlogs and all of that. But there has not been any sort of centralized national coordinated effort for active duty folks to be able to take those cases beyond the assistance provided by the Legal Services Office.
Is anyone working on that?
And so that's why we were created to do that. And it's been it was an experiment. It was sort of, there was some wariness about, because the military bar and the civilian bar, there hasn't really been a close connection between the two traditionally. I mean, maybe Tom and you might have a different perspective, but I think that the military hasn't traditionally reached out to the private bar in a coordinated and sort of high level way to recruit assistance. And so this was an experiment to see if we could do this, and we've been taking cases for about 18 months now, and we're approaching the point at which we've been able to secure almost $1 million in pro bono billable hours on behalf of active duty service members, which I think goes to show that there's an incredible amount of support in the private bar for this kind of work. And
how successful have you been with the cases?
Well, I mean, they've been quite successful, and maybe Tom or Aaron, you might be able to speak about that, because what we do is we simply make the match with the pro bono attorney, and the case goes on, and you guys actually see the clients, so maybe
Right.
you can speak.
So we'll actually get the clients who come into our offices with the issues to begin with, and they'll go through the entire issue with us. We'll figure out what their actual legal problems are, and then we'll refer them to the Military Pro Bono Project. Now, sometimes they'll keep up with us and they'll update us on what's going on with them. Sometimes they don't, but of the ones that do, usually they're pretty satisfied with with the results that they're getting. They're pretty satisfied with the attorneys that they've been assigned to and who've been assigned to them. And I think that overall, they're definitely satisfied with the work that's been done.
Have the panel seen any efforts to speed up the process for the cases when people are applying for benefits?
Yes, we have seen some increases or improvements. They're now doing more programs for as soon as somebody's getting off of active duty, they then can apply for their VA benefits, and they're actually getting a turnaround within 6 months. We haven't seen much with the actual appeals process being speeded up or anything along those lines, but we are seeing it with the initial benefits.
So does the ABA make referral for criminal law cases?
We don't, actually. That's one we only focus on civil issues, and in fact civil issues really where there's no sort of a recovery involved, where where the case could potentially be taken on a contingency of fee arrangement. But maybe
Darren
does this work, so he could tell you a little more about that process.
Usually with regards to criminal issues, either the military decides that it's going to pursue a case, or it'll give it over to the civilian authorities. In the event that they decide that the civilian authorities are more appropriate to prosecute a crime, we haven't really, as far as I know, there's no resources that exist to help defense attorneys in the military coordinate with, I guess, public defenders to help people who are being pursued by civilian authorities.
No, I'm just thinking back in my day in the Army in 66 through 73, we did not have civilian attorneys, and nobody wanted to really go up against that military wall. And as you say, most of the cases were AWOLs and things of this nature, disrespect officers. No, but what I'd like to say is that also today we have people such as Judge Kirby that's doing the Veterans Court, and we have this whole Veterans Diversion Project that's going under Dr. Ferguson, which is also training police officers, the Crisis Intervention Team. And in that Veterans Court, I believe they just opened up one in Harvey, and they're going to be doing another one in Rockford. I'm fairly sure that they could use some good lawyers to help those veterans with the situations that they find themselves in. And this is so very important for these young veterans that are getting off and are still, shall we say, have the residue of war to kind of shake off. And they find themselves in situations where they're speeding down the street, or they find themselves in a barroom brawl, or unfortunately so many times in domestic violence situations. To be able to get these veterans to the treatment that they need versus turning them into felons is something that this group of lawyers, those of you that are here, can very well be a great deal of assistance to the veterans community.
A lot of times the veterans that have actually contacted us are usually receiving Social Security or some type of other disability or assistance while their VA claim is pending, because most of the time when they're seeking our assistance, their claim had been denied and they're still waiting on the appeal, so they've contacted them. We do also refer them to Social Security, but not any other particular aspects.
That's one of the most important things that we do with the VetNet, is connect the veteran and the family to those services that they need to survive, because there can be years between the time that the claim is presented, and if it goes into appeal, that's 2 or 3 other years. So the veteran is left in a void. And it's imperative, it's important that that veteran continues the process of trying to have a life that they can enjoy and is worth living. So we connect them to non-VA social service agencies and other resources that can help them continue with their life plans and their life dreams.
So do you refer veterans to legal services programs?
Legal services programs and pro bono programs typically have an income eligibility ceiling, which is based on the federal poverty level. And with an active duty service member, they're going to have some kind of income, earned income, obviously. And when you add in things like housing assistance or allowance and subsistence allowance and that sort of thing, they're going to be ineligible for that kind of free help. Now, there's still what one would probably consider at least to be of modest means and not able to go out and hire an attorney, but most are not going to be eligible for, as I said, traditional legal services. And even when they are, the kind of the added layer of difficulty that they face in dealing with their legal problems is they're often multi-jurisdictional kinds of problems. The soldier stationed in Texas and has been served with a lawsuit in Virginia, or is in Iraq and now has a foreclosure in Florida, and these are the kinds of things that legal services programs sometimes are wary about or shy away from taking, and so we have a little bit more difficulty, and that's why we really rely much more heavily on the private bar. Now, we do have an income eligibility cap for our referrals, which is an E6 pay grade, and below are presumed to be eligible for our program. So we don't. So we recognize, there's a certain limit, and actually I think that military legal assistance has a pay grade eligibility cap
Only
as
to go
well.
to court.
Only to, okay, all right. So anyway, that's the way we deal with that issue. One thing I didn't actually mention about the way our project works is that all of the case referrals we get are first worked up by the legal assistance attorneys in the military office, and basically, we exist to be a resource of last resort where they have done as much as they can. And they actually tend to get involved in that level in terms of assisting with asserting those stays and doing those kinds of things. We get the case where there's actually representation required. But certainly with the SCRA, we do get SCRA referrals quite a bit, but there's quite a great deal, actually, the legal assistance attorneys are able to do to assert those stays.
At the legal assistance attorney level, we'll send communications to opposing law firms asserting claims under SCRA, letting them know. Some cases, and then with foreclosure, if it was purchased after the person came on active duty, they may not have as much protections as the reservist who was called up or the person who had it before. So that SCR claim may or may not be there for that individual person.
I just want to follow up on that as well. I think one issue that a lot of service members face is that a lot of civilian attorneys that they're going up against don't really know about the SCRA or about what's in it and what their obligations as opposing counsel are. So I think it's very important to get the word out on what exactly the responsibilities within civil proceedings are for both sides in those actions.
Unfortunately, a lot of courts don't understand it either.
And where we see a lot of problems, as I mentioned, family law is the kind of the biggest area that we receive referrals. And when you have a service member who's been served with a divorce case or a custody modification or whatever by the other party who may be pro se and maybe isn't represented, that person isn't even a lawyer and certainly isn't probably going to be thinking about, well, I need to affirmatively state whether my ex-spouse or whatever is serving on active duty status. So those are the cases we see a lot of where a stay should have been put in place, but it wasn't. Case went forward, defaults were entered, and so on and so forth. And then and our pro bono attorneys then get involved and get the case reopened or do whatever needs to be done to fix that problem.
There are a couple of resources for veterans that are facing foreclosure. We've been able to help a few through the Northwest Realtors Association. They actually have come up with the monies to pay the mortgages for a couple of our veterans. The Cook County Veterans Assistance Commission helps with rental assistance, and we have a couple other organizations that we reach out to when we find veterans in those situations. And there are a host of them. There are many folks out here that are willing to help in those type of situations. But I can almost assure you most of the veterans that come to us are in debt or in crisis across the board.
Did anyone else have suggestions about referrals?
Oh, well, I believe I mentioned earlier, we get a lot of phone calls from veterans in general looking for something that we particularly can assist with, and we do have a specific list of organizations that we refer them out to, whether it's in the Chicago area or not. I have one last thing to say. If anyone has any questions about veterans things, I just want to give our phone number to the clinic, so if you'd like to give us a call, have any questions, feel free. Our number is 312-360-2656, and if we can't help you, we can definitely refer you to who can or explain more things about what our clinic can do.
Is there a website address?
There is. It's www.johnmarshall.jmls.edu/VLSC.
And Jason, your organization as well?
Well, if we receive a referral from a legal assistance office for this kind of an issue, if there has been a violation of law, there certainly are attorneys who are willing to take those, particularly where there may be statutory damages available and that sort of thing. So, I mean, we take, as I said, all manner of civil cases, and I will mention that you can find out more information about the Military Pro Bono Project on the web at militaryprobono.org, and all the information about the project is there, including the kinds of cases that our pro bono attorneys handle and how to get involved, and hope you'll join us.
Why don't you give your number, just in case somebody doesn't have the internet.
And if you want to call by phone. 312-988-5783.
So there was a lot talked about today. I'm going to throw out one more question to our panel. We talked about lengthy delays, the difficulty in people trying to process these applications on their own, the appeals, what's going to happen in the future. We talked about resources, lack of staffing. Sounds like a lot of lack and a lot of problems that are worth addressing. So if you had a panacea or a solution to all this, one that would make your job easier in the next year, in terms of this situation, what would be? And I'm going to start with you, Jason, and we'll end with you, Darren.
Darren, you want to go first?
My fault.
Well, I mean, I can certainly say our project was created as a pilot to see if we could make this thing work. We have been able to make it work, but now what we're faced with is the military has found it to be a fairly useful resource, which means that we are now stretched to our absolute limit in what we can do.
What would make it easier?
So what would make it easier would be more money for more staffing and more assistance, as well as more involvement by family law pro bono attorneys.
All right, Jessica?
I think more is obviously the same thing with us as well. More people being involved and knowing about veterans' benefits and what they are, and knowing that they are like workman's comp. They're something that they're entitled to receive. And if we get more attorneys involved in helping get these appeals done, they might be able to speed the process along and help more veterans to get their benefits.
So you need more attorneys working with your organization?
You would like that, yes.
David?
That's a biggie, but most certainly in this sense, more attorneys, more organizations such as represented here. And from our perspective, we need to educate the veterans. And we are looking for resources to do exactly that, because, again, if we could take our learned experience and take our pain and make it the gain for these veterans, not only the ones that are just returning, but our senior gray-bearded veterans such as myself that are just coming in and realizing that they need assistance.
Which resources do you need more? More people on the street educating people, or more funding resources?
We need. Well,
I know you need both.
Yeah, I know from the egg. Well, I know where the egg is at, and I know the chicken. I think we need a little bit, a bunch of both. But we need more resources just dedicated to helping the veteran transition. We need resources to address this huge backlog in claims. So it is money all the way across the board, so we can really take care of American veterans and give them the services and support that the service has earned.
I give your website address and phone.
I can give you a phone number.
Okay.
I prefer if you give me a call at 312-569-8828, and that is for any veteran or any veteran's family member that you might find that is confused, destabilized, or just in need of someone to talk to about their situation.
Great. Thank you. Tom?
Okay, absent extra help of attorneys, my perfect world would be more knowledge of SCRA and things in the courts, so that the service member at least has the protections that Congress authorized.
How can that happen?
Well, I believe the Cook County judges are going to be having some training on it here pretty soon. I've already given training to the state's attorneys people for the child support people. So more training, more knowledge in those areas. That way the people are at least have a fighting chance of getting their protections and stuff like that. So then we don't have to clean it up afterwards.
Great. Contact info?
Okay.
I know yours is a little different situation.
Ours is a little different. We do military stuff, but I'm happy to take calls from attorneys on any military SCRA issues or anything like that. So my phone number is area code 847-688-4753 and then extension 112. That's direct to me.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes, and obviously since Tom and I work in the same office, our perspective on what's needed is probably going to be the same. I think it's also going to be a wider knowledge of the SCRA amongst civilian attorneys. I think that's probably going to be the best way for us to ensure that the service members, active duty service members, they're entitled to. And that's pretty much it.
Right. I would like to thank all of you for coming and participating and staying this whole while, for the great questions that you asked, and for our wonderful esteemed panel. Hopefully they'll be able to stick around a couple minutes afterwards in case you have additional questions, and if we could give them a round of applause. Thank you.
And thanks also to Kimberly O'Kelly, our moderator.